Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said well. I'm doing well. Today we are in Los Angeles and we are going to be headed to the west side of Los Angeles. We're actually going to go to kind of where the border of Venice and Santa Monica is, and it'll look pretty familiar to you. We're going to talk about the kind of the dark side of the life of supermodel and actress Margot Hemingway. Daze with Jordan the Lion and you all. It begins right now. So we're up here on Fraser Street where Margot was living at the time of her death, and if it looks familiar, it's because while I was here making videos, I showed that the Doors actually lived right back there for a while. But just 2 doors down is where Margot, on the anniversary of her grandfather's death, took her own life. Right here. Margot is a member of the famous Hemingway family. Her grandfather was Ernest Hemingway, one of the most famous writers in the world, and her father was the eldest son, Ernest Hemingway, and it was said that the Hemingway family was cursed. Throughout Margot's life, many family members would die of mysterious circumstances or take their own life like her grandfather did on the family farm in Idaho. She would end up losing, including herself, 7 members throughout her life to that unfortunate set of circumstances. So she had a lot of problems growing up, and this house actually was the last house that she was living in. She wasn't living here very long. She had just moved in, and she had battled mental health issues most of her life. Basically, kind of from her upbringing, her mother had never really loved her father and was a heavy drinker because of it. Tried to subdue her feeling of being unfulfilled and not having a true love by drinking a lot, and it led to a very dysfunctional family. Margot and her sisters would see this, and Margot herself would, at a young age, 14 years old, start sneaking into a local bar and would be drinking. She would end up becoming a pretty heavy partier, doing just about anything in her teenage years, skipping school. And by the time she was a teenager, she was very beautiful. She had those beautiful blue eyes and blonde hair. She decided she wanted to use that beauty to make a career, so she went off to New York City and became a fashion model and ended up becoming very successful. Her look was very sought after. You almost couldn't find a magazine, a fashion magazine in the 70s that she hadn't been on, whether it be Elle or Time magazine or Vogue. She was just always on something, and her face was instantly recognizable. Now, unfortunately, even before she was 20 years old, she would be battling depression, alcoholism, bulimia, epilepsy, and just before she turned 20, she met a restaurateur who was much older than her, named Errol, who immediately fell in love with her. They had a whirlwind romance traveling around, and within 4 months they were married, and he took over her career as her manager and would nitpick every little thing about her appearance. Anything that he thought that could or should be changed, he didn't hesitate to tell her, and that would absolutely wear her out and wear on her psyche to where she would continue on with the drinking and everything even more than she ever had before. As she commenced into a married lifestyle, he began telling her what she could and couldn't wear. And so she decided to actually sober up. And once she sobered up, she started to realize how controlling and manipulative he was. And even though he had a lot of money that could help her career, he was mentally destroying her. So after 3 years, she decided to leave the marriage, and her career actually took off. Her career went bigger and better than it ever had before, but she felt like she was under more scrutiny than ever before, more pressure to feel and look perfect, especially in the modeling industry where it was so competitive and everyone's meant to look so perfect. It would, again, then prey on her bulimia, and she would battle to control her weight and her mental health issues during this time. Then Margot decided that she wanted to stretch her career and become an actress, and so she was offered the part in the movie Lipstick, where she would play a supermodel who was abused and assaulted, and it was a challenging role. It was something that she was familiar with because of the life that she lived, but she had never been under the pressure of being the lead in a movie. And so this took its toll on her psyche, playing that part. But she also wanted to help her younger sister Muriel. So she, even though Muriel was only 14, got her a part in the movie. And then when Lipstick came out, which was starring Margot and Chris Sarandon, she got mixed reviews. Some people thought she had an amazing performance. Some people thought that it was a stiff performance and that it wasn't very good. But the reviews all seemed to love her younger sister, almost as though her helping her younger sister get into the movie, her younger sister was replacing her almost. People all of a sudden then were in awe of her younger sister who looked like her and was beautiful, and they started, focusing on her, which then was a major weight on Margot's psyche again. Unfortunately, Margot and her sister never really had a great relationship, but this was Margot's attempt to have one. And instead of, their 7-year difference, this bringing them together, it actually drove them further apart, because her younger sister really never wanted anything to do with Margot because of her partying and everything that she was doing. But also, this would kind of start a rivalry because they had similar features, and now her younger sister's getting all the praise. Margot battled a lot of insecurity after this and ended up falling in love with the director and, at least marrying him to help her insecurities, and they moved to Paris, seemingly to go have a happy life, until more drinking, her addiction just completely ramped up. And then unfortunately she was off on a skiing trip and had an accident while skiing, and it basically laid her up for about a year, and she gained a lot of weight. She gained, I believe they said 75 pounds, was weighing up to 200 pounds, and that led to her depression, especially because she had always been bulimic up to this point. So she battled to lose all of that weight by going to the Betty Ford Center. Now, after she was able to care for her addictions in the Betty Ford Center, she came out and her second marriage fell apart, and so she divorced him and tried to have a comeback. She had made, by this point, many movies. None of them were very successful, not compared to her acting career. And she also became an advocate for mental health, speaking out about some of it. But unfortunately, even though she looked great, she was back to looking like herself, she had lost all the weight and everything, there just wasn't really a place for her. People weren't trying to hire her, and her depression ramped up even more. By this point, Margot was probably at her lowest. She had even tried to do Playboy, hoping that would resurrect her career, and nothing happened. She really had no true support system, not family anyway. Most of her family she had become estranged from by her own choice, and even her own mother she didn't reconcile with until she was on her deathbed with cancer. So Margot was living here. She had just moved in, and it was said that some of her neighbors had seen her within days of moving in out front here on the sidewalk, kind of looking lost and confused and talking about weird things. So one of her friends had noticed that Margot was acting more peculiar than usual, and so she had made it a point to check on Margot every day. She would call her or stop by, and one day she called and she wasn't getting any answer, and so she came over here to the house, saw Margot's car was in the driveway, and was ringing the doorbell. Nobody would answer. So she ended up going and getting a ladder and climbing up to Margot's bedroom window, and when she looked in, she could see Margot laying on the bed as though she was asleep with her arms folded across her. And when they got help, of course, they found out that she had passed away, and it was the anniversary of when her grandfather, Ernest Hemingway, took his life. Now, originally, people were shocked and they were confused, but a toxicology report finally gave answers saying that it was phenobarbital overdose, and her sister, Mariel, didn't believe it, didn't want to accept it. But unfortunately, this tortured life was now over, and it happened right here in this house. Margot was interred with her grandfather and other family members in the family plot in Ketchum, Idaho. Rest in peace, Margot Hemingway. Thank you all for watching today. We'll see you next time from Los Angeles, California. Have a good night and goodbye.